I am a 26-year-old female. Earlier this year, I met up with one of my best friends, Courtney. It was a Friday night and we went to a local village. Next to the center of town, there were some restaurants, and there was also a park with live music being played. We had made reservations to the restaurant, but got there about an hour early to walk around and enjoy the night. It was very nice weather that evening, and lots of other people were out. Courtney and I walked over to the concert, and there was a bit of a crowd standing nearby. We hung out there for a while until it was time for our dinner reservations. While we were over there, I took a picture of Courtney and I and posted it to my Snapchat story. We later went to a nearby restaurant and then walked around the plaza. After we left, we each went home. Now, after arriving back to my apartment, I saw that I had a few Snapchat notifications. One of them in particular caught my eye. A guy who I did not know responded to my story. He responded to the picture of Courtney and I and said, "I was behind you guys." I did not have any clue as to who this guy was, and I did not even remember becoming friends with him on Snapchat. I realized that he must have recognized us though, and also been at the concert thing. I responded with something like, "Oh, haha, that's funny." He then said something like, "Yes, I was watching you the whole time." I was a little bit creeped out by this response, but hoped and assumed that he was just joking. I did not respond. However, the man then sent another message a very short time later. I looked, and he asked where I was going next weekend and said that he would watch us then too. I asked the man who he even was. I was wondering why and when I became friends with him on Snapchat. The man did not respond, but left me on read. After that, I blocked him. I then started talking to Courtney and telling her of the situation. Courtney said that the guy had also sent her some Snapchats that same night. She also mentioned how he was being creepy, and she too did not know who he was. After that, she blocked him as well. I remember that for a few days, and the next time I saw Courtney, I was a little bit paranoid. Luckily, nothing strange has happened since, except I never saw what the guy looked like, and I still don't know. I'm not sure if he was actually at the concert thing and watching us, or if he was just saying that on Snapchat. I honestly don't know why. I'm just hoping that I never encounter him again. I live by myself in a 2-story house. It's not that big, but enough space for me, and I've lived here for about 5 years now. Something really crazy happened last year. I worked pretty late one night. After getting home, I went inside of my house and was planning to pretty much go straight to bed. So I went down the hallway, took a shower, and then went into my bedroom. It was right after I got into my bedroom that I thought I heard the sound of a door opening downstairs. Obviously, I was home alone, so I didn't know what that would be. I didn't hear it that clearly, so I stopped what I was doing and listened. I thought that I heard footsteps then. I couldn't exactly tell where they were coming from or where they were going. I also didn't know which door inside of my house I had heard opening. It was not the front door. It just sounded like it was downstairs someplace. So as I stood there just inside of my bedroom listening, the noises quieted down. I no longer heard footsteps of somebody walking or anything. I was still pretty freaked out about it though. After about a minute or two, I still hadn't heard anything, and I got up the courage to investigate. Most of my lights inside were off, so I left my bedroom and headed downstairs. I started turning on just about every light and going in one room at a time. I was really nervous and didn't know what to expect, but each room that I entered, I didn't see anybody there. Eventually, I made it around all the rooms on the main level of my house. I was very confused, but also relieved that I didn't see anyone. I thought that maybe I had just been hearing things or imagining. Still, the noises seemed pretty real when I had heard them. So then I went around and turned all the lights back out. I was going to finally go back to bed when I got to the staircase and was about to go up. I heard another noise. It was the sound of a door opening again, except this time I could tell that it was the door leading to the basement. I hadn't checked the basement at all when looking through my house. I realized that somebody must have been down there. From where I was, I could not see the door to the basement. I quickly started going upstairs to get to my bedroom. As I was doing this, I heard footsteps moving around on the main level, heading in my direction. I got to the top of the stairs and then went to my bedroom. As I was going inside there, I heard whoever was inside of my house starting to go up the stairs. Now I was extremely nervous. I locked my bedroom door behind me and quickly went for my cell phone. Then I dialed 911. As I was doing this, the footsteps started to reach the top of the stairs. I told the 911 dispatcher that there was an intruder in my home, and I gave them the address. Meanwhile, the footsteps got closer and closer to my room. Then the person tried entering. The door did not open because it was locked. After trying the door, the person seemed to go across the hallway to another room. I stayed inside of my bedroom and feared that the person might try to get into my room again. However, I heard the footsteps moving back down the hallway less than a minute later. Then I heard them going back downstairs. Whoever was there seemed to go back down. After that, I really didn't hear anything. When the police got there, I finally left my bedroom. They came inside and searched my entire house, including the basement, but they didn't find anyone. They also searched outside, but came up empty there as well. However, they did notice that my back door was unlocked. Whoever had been there had left. I never saw what they looked like, but I had forgotten to lock the back door to my house, and that's likely how they got in. They must have been hiding in my basement. It just really creeps me out knowing that they tried entering my bedroom, knowing that I was in there. The person never came back though. For some background to the story, I'm a female and was 17 at the time. I was a senior in high school and lived with my parents. I have Snapchat and have had it since middle school actually. It was a very common way for me to talk to friends in high school. Occasionally, I would get added by random people who I didn't know. I would say it happened about every week or two. However, I never added anybody back unless I knew exactly who they were. I added some random people back when I was much younger, and some of them were kind of weird, so I stopped doing that. Well, I remember one day, I got added by some random guy on Snapchat. I did not add him back and deleted it. So I think it was the next day or else a couple days later, I got added by one of my friends from school. It was not one of my best friends, but somebody who I knew decently. I already was friends with her on Snapchat, so when I saw it, I figured that she made a new account. In high school, it was not that uncommon for people to make new accounts for various reasons. I didn't think too much of it, and I added her back. That afternoon, after I arrived home from school, I was just in my bedroom at my desk, and that same friend messaged me on Snapchat. She asked me what I was doing, and I said that I was just at home doing homework. She then told me that she was going to come over. I said okay, but it seemed a little bit odd. She had maybe come over like once or twice, but it had been a really long time. I also hadn't really hung out with her in a while. During this time, my parents were still gone at work, and I was at home by myself. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. I assumed it to be my friend, and I was still a little bit confused that she was coming over at all. But she also did not text me on Snapchat to say that she was there or anything. So I left my bedroom, and I walked out into the living room. I soon saw that there was a random man standing on the front step. I had no idea who he was or what he was doing at my house. I decided not to answer the door. Luckily, he did not see me when I looked out of the window. I then went back to my bedroom. When I did, I saw that my friend had now messaged me on Snapchat. She told me that she was outside and asked to be let in. Now I knew what was going on. This was not my friend at all, but this man must have been pretending to be her. I instantly blocked the account. I then went back out into the living room and saw that the man was still standing there. I wasn't sure what I was going to do about it, but that's when I noticed my dad's car going down the street. He was coming back home from work. As soon as he started to pull into the driveway, the man at the front step just took off running. He left the front yard, going back out into the street. My dad came inside and mentioned how he saw a guy running from our yard. I told him what happened, and he called the cops. We talked to them when they came out, and they said that they would look into it. That man must have known my friend's name if he pretended to be her. How he even knew who I was, I do not know. My best guess is that he saw me on Facebook or Instagram or something, or maybe even in person. He must have looked at my friends list on probably Facebook to get her name and then impersonate her on Snapchat. It was crazy, but luckily I never heard from him or saw him again. This happened last year and still creeps me out when I think of it. So I was at home one night by myself. I was just in my bedroom scrolling through my phone. All of a sudden, I saw this Snapchat notification from a name that I did not recognize. I was curious, so I went to Snapchat and opened the snap to see. It was a selfie of what appeared to be a man. However, this photo was taken extremely close to his face, and he also appeared to be in a very dark room. I could barely see his face at all, and didn't recognize it to be anybody that I knew. The picture honestly looked very creepy. There was no words with the picture, and that was it. I guess at some point, I must have become friends with this guy. I didn't know when though. I had Snapchat for probably 10 years. I did not send a picture back, but instead typed a message for the guy, asking who he was. Then he sent another photo. When I opened it, I saw that it was much like the one before. It was honestly so creepy. I wish I would have screenshotted it, but I didn't. I thought that maybe the person sent a picture like this by mistake, but after the second one, I realized that it was not. I asked again who it was. The person's response, though, really shocked me. He simply said, "I'm coming over now." I thought that he had to be joking, but I also realized then that I had my location on Snapchat. I quickly went into the settings and turned my location off. If this guy was serious, I was hoping that he would not know where I was. Then I blocked the mysterious guy. I thought that was it. I returned to what I was doing, but I couldn't help but feel a little bit creeped out by the whole thing. Well, roughly 30 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. I had a terrible feeling instantly. I think by now it was like 10-something at night. Not a normal time for somebody to come to the door. I carefully left my bedroom and went down the hallway. Eventually, I got to a window that I could look out and see who was there. When I did, I saw a man wearing a ski mask standing there. I couldn't believe it. The guy must have got my location before I had turned it off. I watched him knock on the door again. Then he started to look around. When he did, I quickly moved back and away from the window. I heard the guy walk off the step, but did not know where he was going to. The next thing I knew, I heard him right outside one of the main windows. I ran back into my bedroom and then called the police. I locked my bedroom door and covered my window. Then I just waited. I did not hear anything during this time. I wasn't sure what was going on, if he was trying to break in or maybe if he left. About 10 minutes later is when the cops arrived. They came to the front door and I told them about what happened. They offered to look around, and I almost said that they didn't have to, but I ended up saying sure. Then they looked around my backyard, and surprisingly found the man hiding in some bushes. When they located him, they asked him to come out. He ignored them and then tried to run. However, the police caught up with him before he left the yard. It was the same guy who had been Snapchatting me. I'm not sure what his plans were. I'm just glad that he was caught. This took place back when I was a kid. I believe that I was 10 years old or so. This was in the late 90s, and during this time, I would ride the bus home from school. It would drop me off at the corner, not far from my house. Then I would walk a short distance on the sidewalk and go inside. We lived in a pretty standard neighborhood in the suburbs, and when I would arrive back home from school, both of my parents would still be gone at work. I had been trusted to be home by myself since I was 9 years old, and I didn't mind it. But in the afternoons, I would usually only be by myself for about 2 or 3 hours. I would just hang around the house and do homework or watch TV usually. So one time I got home from school like always. I was by myself, and it was maybe about 15 minutes or so after I got back home. I was in the living room when there was a knock at the front door. I looked over, and from where I was, I could tell that somebody was there, but I couldn't see who they were. Back then, I was a shy kid, and I didn't want the person at the door to see me, so I ducked down. The person at the door then knocked again. I was curious, so I carefully moved to a window and looked out to see who it was. There was a man there, but I did not recognize him, and he was just standing at the front step. After knocking twice, the guy then tried opening the door, which was locked. Then he finally walked away. I thought that this was really weird. I watched him cut through the front yard and then go out of sight, heading towards the sidewalk. It was very confusing why this guy would be here. I was thinking that he had to be at the wrong house or something. I really couldn't think of any other possible explanation. But after the guy left, I moved on and forgot about it. It was certainly strange and a bit creepy, but it didn't seem that bad to me. My parents ended up getting home later, and everything was fine. But the very next day, I saw the man again. I remember that I rode the bus home, and I got dropped off. Shortly after I stepped off the bus, I remember noticing the guy. He was a long ways away, but walking down the sidewalk. I found it strange to see him here again, because until the previous day, I had never seen him before. I was not aware of him living in the area or anything like that. So I tried to hurry up, and I walked quickly to my house. Then I unlocked the door and went inside. Once I was in, I felt safe, and I didn't really think that the man would do anything. But maybe 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door again. I looked and saw that the same guy was back. Obviously, I was not going to answer the door. I tried to stay hidden from the view of the man. This time, he only knocked once, and again he tried opening the door. But after that, I saw him start to walk away. It was pretty much the same thing as the day before, and I saw him go out of my sight. This time though, I was more creeped out because of the fact that he was here 2 days in a row. Plus, he saw me walk to the house, so there was no mistaking it. But for the next hour or so, nothing else strange happened. I was just hanging out in the living room. Then I decided to go out and water some of the flowers in the backyard. I went to the back of the house where the kitchen was, and then left out the back door. I took 2 steps into the backyard and saw the guy coming out from behind a bush. He was walking towards me. I ran back inside as fast as I could, and the man started running after me. I closed the door and locked it just in the nick of time. He nearly stopped me. He tried getting in, but couldn't. I ran out of the room and went to the phone in the living room. I dialed 911 and asked for police to come to my address. The man ran away at that point though. I was glad he was gone. The police got there a while later and searched the entire property as well as the neighborhood. However, the man was long gone by then. There was a bit of an investigation done. I don't really remember much else, other than a neighbor about a block away remembered seeing a work van parked on the side of the road. They didn't know whose it was, and it was thought that maybe that was the guy's vehicle. After that though, he never came back. I'm really glad that I was alright. I will never forget that. I'm a 29-year-old female, and I live with my husband in a house. Our neighborhood is pretty standard for the most part, and this happened about 1.5 years ago. I worked pretty normal hours then, but my husband's hours are more random. On this night, I recall that he was working late. It was probably sometime after 8 p.m., and I remember that I was in the living room. I was FaceTiming my sister and young nephew. The 3 of us were talking until her son had to go to bed, and then I hung up. At that point, I recall looking out the front window and noticing a car starting to pull into our driveway. A couple of things struck me as odd about this though. For one, it was not my husband's vehicle, and he wasn't supposed to be home yet. And for 2, the vehicle's lights were off as it entered the driveway. Now our driveway is somewhat long and goes up to the garage. The garage is out of sight of the house though because it connects to it. So the car ended up slowing down and then just barely going out of my sight and parking. I kept watching and was now listening as well, but I didn't hear anybody getting out or anything. I called my husband and let him know what was going on. I was hoping that maybe this was one of his friends or something, but he had no clue as to who that would be and said that he would leave work as soon as possible. After hanging up with him, I wasn't really sure what to do. I then walked over to the dining room, which had a window that looked out to the backyard. It was very dark back there as well. But when I looked, I saw what appeared to be a man walking out from behind the garage and into the backyard. When I saw this, I left the room and dialed 911. I told the operator my address and told him the situation of what was going on. I was told that police were on the way. After that, I was walking through the living room when I suddenly heard the sound of glass breaking. It sounded like the dining room window was being smashed. I ran the rest of the way to the bedroom and then closed the door behind me and locked it. I moved into the bedroom closet and shut the door there as well. Now that I was there, I really couldn't hear too much. Several minutes went by and I thought that I was in the clear, but then I heard footsteps in the hallway. When that happened, I held my breath. The man got closer and closer and didn't go into any other rooms. It seemed as though he was heading straight for the bedroom that I was in. He then tried opening the door, which was locked. When it didn't open, there was a very loud bang at the door. Perhaps the man was trying to break the door down by hitting it with something. Then, after another loud bang, I heard police sirens in the distance. This caused the man to move away from the door and go back down the hallway. Within a minute, police were out front of the house. I didn't hear much more until I was sure that the cops were there. Then I left the bedroom and went out into the hallway. The police had found the man leaving through the backyard, and luckily he was caught. The man had in fact broken the glass to the dining room, but nothing in the house was really messed up other than the window. I'm not sure what the guy's plan was, but I'm really grateful that the police got there when they did. This happened just last year. I live alone in a house with 2 floors and 3 bedrooms total. One of the bedrooms I use as a guest room, and the other as my home office. So one night, I got home from work. It was maybe like 7 p.m. or so, I would say. After arriving back, I went inside and then started to cook some food. The kitchen was at the back center of my house. I listened to the radio as I was cooking, and it took me maybe 30 minutes. When I was done, I decided to go upstairs and change and then go back down to eat. So I walked upstairs and was going to my bedroom, but I noticed that the door to the guest bedroom was closed. I always left the doors open and I didn't recall closing it. This was really strange to me, so I went over and opened up the door and took a step inside. The lights were off, but before I could reach the light switch, I saw something. There was a woman standing in the back side of the room and looking at me. It was really dark in there, so I didn't get a good look at her at all. But after about a second, she started to charge at me. I stepped back and closed the door and then ran back down the hallway. When I made it to the stairs, I heard the woman opening the bedroom door. I didn't have any time to think and guess why there was a random woman in my house and why she was now chasing after me. After going down the stairs, I really wasn't thinking at all. I don't know why, but I ran to the door next to it, which led to the basement. Then I went in there and closed the door behind me. I was standing at the top of the stairs, and it was completely dark down there, and I guess I thought that it would be a good hiding place. When I was there, I heard the woman go down the stairs, but then she seemed to turn and go in another direction, instead of heading towards the basement. I started to feel just slightly better. I took out my phone to call the police, and when I did, it lit up the surrounding area of where I was. I was standing at the top of the stairs still, and I saw that there appeared to be a man standing in the basement at the bottom of the stairs, and he was walking towards me. When I saw this, I opened the door back up and left the basement. Then I just ran for the front door. I honestly don't know where the woman was, but thankfully I did not see her. I left the house and ran for my car. Once there, I got inside and called the police. I then drove away from my house and did not come back until the cops were there. When the police got there, they went inside my house and were able to locate both the woman and the man. The crime couple was arrested. I'm not sure how, but they were able to get inside of my house. There was no sign of a break-in, so I never found out where they entered. Maybe I left a door unlocked, but I really don't know. Apparently, they both entered together though, and for some reason, the woman hid upstairs and the man hid downstairs. I'm not sure if I surprised them by getting home or what. I think they were planning on robbing me. That was by far the scariest moment of my life though. I still live in the house, but since then, I've taken just about every security measure there is, and and hopefully nothing like that ever happens again. This is my scariest experience of being at home by myself. It happened back when I was 12 years old. It was a long time ago now, but I still remember it really well. During this time, I lived with my parents, older sister, and younger brother. It was very rare that I would be at home by myself, but somehow it happened. It was a Friday evening, and my dad was out of town until the next morning for work. He didn't travel for work a whole lot, but every now and then he did. I remember that my sister was at her best friend's house and was going to be sleeping over there. As for my mom and brother, they were at a birthday party my brother was invited to. I was not invited, and my mom went with my brother because she was basically helping the birthday kid's mom with the party. So that left me home alone, all by myself on a Friday night. My big plans were to just relax and play video games. I was excited about it though, because I rarely got the entire place to myself. Our house was pretty average for the most part. There were 2 levels, with all the bedrooms being upstairs. Downstairs was the living room, dining room, and kitchen. So after my mom left that afternoon shortly after I got back from school, she gave me instructions on how to make a frozen pizza. I had never cooked before, but I loved frozen pizza, and at about 7 p.m. I cooked it. Everything went pretty well, and then I went into the living room and sat in an office chair right in front of the TV and started playing on my PlayStation. This went on for several hours. At about 9 o'clock at night, I heard the sound of somebody stepping onto the front step where our door was. The living room was at the front of the house, so it really wasn't that far away. When I heard the person walk onto the front step, I assumed that it was my mom and brother returning from the birthday party. I kept playing, expecting to hear the door open at any point. But after several minutes went by, nothing happened. Nobody entered the house. I got curious, and I got up and walked over to the front door to look outside. When I did, I didn't see anybody there. There was no one at the front door, and my mom's car was not in the driveway either. As I was looking there though, something caught my eye to the left. I looked and saw what appeared to be a man walking through the front yard. He was just barely in my sight for about a second before disappearing past what I could see. He had gone towards the side of the house, or maybe the neighbor's yard. I was a little nervous after this, but I assumed that the man had left. I didn't really know who he was or what he was doing. I kept watching around the front yard for a minute or so and saw nothing more. So after that, I returned to my video games. I couldn't help but be creeped out by what I had seen, so I was trying to take my mind off of it. And after about 10 minutes, it was starting to work. That is, until suddenly I heard the sound of somebody trying to open the back door to the house. Our back door was connected to the kitchen and went out to the patio. This sound was much louder, and I instantly stood up. I ran over to the phone and called my mom's number. During this time, I didn't hear any more noises. I told my mom that somebody tried coming in the back door, and she told me to call the police. She told me that she would be home as soon as she could, but the birthday party was still going on. So after that, I quickly ran upstairs and then went into my bedroom. Once I was there, I called the police and told them that I thought somebody was trying to break in. After giving them my address, I went and hid behind my bed. I covered myself with tons of blankets. I was really too scared to want to know what was going on. As I waited for the police to arrive, I was hoping that the man had just left and not tried breaking in. I wasn't hearing anything, but then again, I was covered in blankets. It felt like forever, but maybe 10 minutes later, the police got there. I remember that I got a call on the phone and was told that they were there. I never would have gone down and left my bedroom on my own. When that happened, I got up, but heard people talking, so I stayed in my bedroom. I remember a while later, there was a knock at my bedroom door. I was terrified until I heard a voice on the other side say police. Then I answered the door and there was an officer there. He told me that they had caught a man who had just broken in. I was told that the police got there in the nick of time, and they really did. The man had somehow got the back door to the house open. He had literally just entered when the police arrived. The man was arrested and luckily didn't get far into the house. I was honestly shocked when I heard it, but luckily everything turned out fine. He wasn't able to steal anything or do any damage. The back door needed a little bit of fixing, but it wasn't a huge deal. After that though, I didn't want to stay home by myself for a while. One time, I got back from work a little bit later at night. I lived alone in an apartment on the second floor during this time. After getting back home, I changed and then went into the living room. I was sitting on the couch eating when I heard this loud noise coming from next door. It sounded like the next door neighbor was banging on the wall. It was extremely loud and went on for almost a minute. I was really confused when I heard this. I wasn't making any loud noises or anything. The TV was on, but the volume was really not that high at all. But yet the neighbor was pounding on the wall as if I was being really noisy and he wanted me to be quiet. I didn't really know why else he would be banging on the wall like that. And even if he was bothered by the TV, I didn't even think it was loud enough for my neighbor to be able to hear it. I wasn't hearing any other loud noises from anywhere else. Just to be sure though, I muted the television. For a short time, everything was quiet. But then, the loud banging on the wall started up again. I really had no idea why my neighbor would be doing this. I wasn't aware of making them angry or anything. And to be honest, I didn't even know who my next door neighbor was on that side. I never really saw them. I had been living in my apartment for like 6 months, but I had never met or seen hardly any of my neighbors. The banging stopped after a short time. I didn't know what to make of this, but for the next couple of minutes, everything was quiet, so I just kind of moved on from that. Except, about 5 minutes later, there was suddenly a loud knocking coming from my front door. It seemed as though whoever had been banging on my wall had now moved to my front door. After it continued for about 30 straight seconds, I decided to get up. I walked over to the door, and when I approached, the banging stopped. I looked through my peephole to the other side, but nobody was there. Whoever had been knocking had now left, and I had no idea who it was. I was just assuming that it was my next door neighbor, but I didn't even know what they looked like. I considered going over there and asking them what the deal was, but I decided not to. Based on how hard they were pounding on the walls and door, I just had a bad feeling about it. So instead, I just moved on again and tried to ignore it. I was hoping that there would be no more banging on my walls or door that night, and luckily there wasn't. So the next day, when I was leaving for work, I walked out of my apartment and went down the hallway. There was an elevator and a set of stairs right next to it. Now, I was always in the habit of just taking the stairs, and I very rarely used the elevator. So after walking down the hallway, I had passed by my next door neighbor's door. A moment later, I heard the door open. This was the same neighbor who had seemingly been banging on the walls and my door last night. I remembered the previous night, but I just kept walking. When I made it to the stairs and started to go down, I heard whoever it was walking behind me. The stairs turned, and I went around the corner and glanced up. I saw a man walking down the stairs, but I did not directly look at him. But apparently, that was the guy who lived next to me. After walking down the stairs, I went through the lobby, and then left out the front door. The guy that was walking behind me did exactly the same thing. He followed me out the door, and was walking behind me as I was on the sidewalk. I parked in the large parking lot that was at the complex. After getting to my vehicle, I got inside. I then saw the guy kind of standing there and looking in my direction. He was about 50 feet away, and I didn't know what his deal was. He just stood there as I drove off and went to work. I had never seen that guy before, but I guess that was my next door neighbor. So I worked that day, and when I arrived home afterwards, it was a little bit later at night once again. By the time I arrived back, I think that it was about 10 o'clock. So I went inside of my apartment building and then walked up the stairs. When I made it to the top, I walked down the hallway towards my door. Right after I passed by my next door neighbor's door, I heard it opening again. I just had a bad feeling, and I walked faster to get to my door. I heard his footsteps enter the hallway. When I arrived at my front door, I quickly unlocked it and opened it up. As I was closing the door behind me, I heard the footsteps still approaching. I closed and locked my door, and probably 5 seconds later, my neighbor actually tried opening it. Then, there was once again more really loud banging coming from the other side of it. I really couldn't believe this guy. I looked out and saw him relentlessly pounding at my front door. I moved away from it then, and was about to call the police. I went and got my phone, but then he stopped. At that point, I put the phone down. I didn't want to get in some war with my next door neighbor. Clearly, he had some problems with me, and he had tried entering my apartment, but I also didn't know if maybe it was just a misunderstanding or something. I decided that if I heard any more banging on the door or walls or anything, I was going to go over and give him a piece of my mind, and hopefully he wasn't dangerous. But after that, nothing else happened. So I would say about a week later, one day I saw another neighbor in the hallway. I went over and introduced myself to her. I had seen her a couple of times before and knew that she lived here. I told her about what happened and asked her if she knew the guy who lived next to me. She told me that nobody lived there and the apartment had been vacant for a while. This was crazy to hear. I then went to the offices of the apartment complex and asked one of the agents. They confirmed that the unit next to mine was vacant and had been for several weeks. My mind was blown after hearing that. I never saw that guy again or heard anything else. I don't live there anymore, but I still get the creeps thinking back to that. I'm a female, and this is something that happened a while back when I was in high school. It was almost 10 years ago, and this was pretty early on into the school year. So randomly one day, I saw that I got added by somebody new on Snapchat. I looked and it was a guy named Michael something, but I didn't recognize his last name at all, so I did not add him back and I deleted it. Just a few days later, I got added on Snapchat by him again, and once more I deleted him. However, probably just a few days after the second time that I deleted the guy, I realized that he was actually in one of my classes and went to my school. I had never talked to him before, and he sat in the back middle of one of my classes while I sat towards the front and one side. So I would never really notice him much, but I did recognize him. He was a new student in the school, and prior to that class, I had never seen him before. Well, he added me again for a third time. This time, I decided to add him back, just because I knew that he went to my school now and that he was new. I still did not know anything about him other than that. I was surprised though that he kept adding me, even after I would not add him back. Well, finally adding him was something that I would quickly regret. I think it was the very next day, early on in the school day, and he sent me a picture of himself. It was just a basic selfie pretty much with no words. I responded sending one back, but he then sent me like 5 random pictures. We were both in different classes at the time. Some he took of other students, and others were just of the floor and whatever. I opened them up and did not reply because it seemed kind of weird. Later on in the day, we had the class that we were in together. This teacher did not like it when students would be on their phone during class, so I did not go on my phone at all during the class until the very end when we were done and all waiting for the bell to ring. When I did, I saw that there were tons of notifications on Snapchat from this Michael guy. I looked, and he literally sent me at least 20 pictures. I opened them all, quickly going from one to the next. They were all pictures of me that he took from where he was sitting. I found this pretty creepy. After opening them all and not responding, I decided to confront him in person. The bell rang at that point, but I caught up to him outside of the classroom in the hallway. I asked him why he had taken so many pictures of me in class. He just stood there not saying anything. I told him I thought it was really weird, and I was going to tell him not to do it again, but before I could, he just turned and ran away. It was very strange. Michael was now seeming like sort of a creep to me, and I decided to delete him on Snapchat, so I did. A few days went by, and I saw him in class, but didn't talk to him or anything. Then he added me on Snapchat again for a 4th time. This time, I blocked him. I really wanted nothing to do with the guy. Well, that very same day, I left school when it was over. I drove to and from school and had a car during this time. I remember that I left school and when I was on my way home, I noticed that Michael was driving behind me. I had never noticed this before and was immediately suspicious. When I made it about halfway home, he was still behind me. I didn't think that he lived near me, and I figured that based on his previous behavior, he was possibly following me. When I had made it almost all the way home, he was still there, and after making it less than a mile from my house, I did not want to go any further, so I pulled over to the side of the street. Michael slowed down in his car but did not pull over. He ultimately drove past me and kept going. Then I went home. I didn't really know what to do about this whole deal. Over the next few days, I noticed Michael in class and I completely ignored him. Luckily, he didn't try talking to me or anything. He also did not add me again on Snapchat or try following me home. And probably a week or two after this, I stopped seeing him in class. Eventually, I asked around, and I found out that he apparently changed schools or something. I'm glad that he did. That whole situation is something that I would like to forget. This happened just last year. I'm a pretty average guy for the most part. I work a job and I have my own little apartment near the city. One day I was added by a seemingly random girl on Snapchat. This is not something that happens very often. My first thought was actually that it was a bot account probably. Still, I was curious, so I decided to add the account back anyways. Well, within probably 20 minutes of adding it back, the account sent me a snap. It was a woman named Avery, and when I opened the snap, I saw a selfie from a good-looking blonde woman who appeared to be around my age. She said hi. I responded sending one back of myself and saying hi. She then typed in the chat instead of sending back another picture. Avery told me that she didn't know if I knew her or not, but she went to my gym and occasionally saw me there. I would work out every day at usually around the same time, which was right after I got off of work. There were lots of regulars that I would see at the gym, as well as other people who I did not know. A lot of people went there and it was a pretty large gym. However, I never really talked to anybody there before and wasn't friends with anyone. I thought about if I had seen her before, and I didn't necessarily remember her exactly, but I thought maybe she looked kind of familiar. She also told me that she wanted to talk to me at the gym, but didn't want to bother me. We got to talking, and it seemed like she liked me. She was very nice, and we had a few things in common. I tried to look her up on Instagram, but I couldn't find any results. There were a few accounts that possibly could have been her, but I didn't know her last name. I couldn't really find anything. After talking for 2 days on Snapchat, Avery asked me if I wanted to meet up sometime. I agreed and said yes. Avery said that she worked at a local bar which was downtown in our local city. She said that I should come and meet her after work that night, and said there was a park right across the street from the bar and we could go there. I agreed, and she said that she got off at 9 p.m. I didn't really think at the time that it was strange to hang out in a park at nighttime. Looking back, it was kind of weird, but I drove to the park and got there. When I did, I went into the parking lot and saw that there was just one other car. I didn't know if this was Avery or not because I was a couple of minutes early. I texted her, but did not immediately hear back, so then I just waited. But after 10 minutes, I was wondering what she was doing. Then she finally texted me back, saying that she was in the park and I should join her. It just seemed sketchy. I told her I was in my car, and I never saw her driving there, and now she was just in the park? The only thing that would make sense is if the other car belonged to her. I had a bad feeling though. For a moment, I didn't know what to do, and I thought about just leaving, but I decided to stay. However, about a minute later, I saw somebody get out of the other car that was there. It was a man wearing a hooded jacket. He began walking over in my direction. I did not know what he wanted or what was going on. So the guy walked all the way over to me, and when he was approaching my window, I just took off. I realized then that I had likely been catfished. After leaving, I blocked the account. I was frustrated by the whole thing, but at least I didn't get robbed or anything, or who knows what would have happened. Looking back, it was strange how she didn't give me any real clear information. I could not find a Facebook or Instagram for her, and she only sent me one picture of herself. It honestly seemed real, and I don't know how that was done, but I know for sure that I've been catfished. Hopefully nothing like this happens again.